almost upon Thanksgiving, and then Christmas, and then New Year's, and 2023 will be in the books. And it seems like it just started, and I'm just amazed at how fast time seems like it slips by. Our lesson this morning is going to be taken out of the book of 1 Kings, the 12th chapter. Have you noticed how noisy everything is these days? Seems like we're just being assaulted by stuff, by information, by entertainment, by sights, by sounds, by messaging. We've talked about this before, how we see in our modern culture the relentless push towards every type of sexual perversion and all. We see it in our movies, our commercials, our you name it. You can't escape it. We see it on billboards as we drive down the road, and as we listen to the radio, you hear ads, or you see them on TV or on the internet. It's just relentless. So why is it that we find all of this money being spent on all of this messaging? Why do we see all these media companies, these big businesses and all, messaging, and a lot of times the messaging has nothing to do with their company or their product or what the product that they're selling. Sex sells, yes, it does. But we see a lot of things, we see, I know the big billboard over there at, big digital board over there at Current Highway and Andrews Highway, during Pride Month. Why do we have Pride Month? And all, we do all those things because they're trying to tell us something. They're trying to lead us in a direction. And that's why you see these big companies, we develop again a whole new vocabularies, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this is a huge thing in our education and in our corporate world, these ideas of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And basically what that means is, as a business owner, as a community, we should accept everything and anything. Who are we to judge? It's all okay, right? And so we're constantly bombarded with these messages that keep coming at us and keep coming at us. You think they're not after our kids? Look at some of the Disney movies that they've come out with in the last few years, and look at the characters and the things that they're talking about and the things that they're saying. Suddenly, somehow, Buzz Lightyear became a homosexual. Okay? So we see all of these things happening, and it's just coming at us and coming at us. So what do we do with that? And what do we do with the people that we run into every day that are also promoting a message? The people at work, the people at school, the people that we know that we work with in so many businesses, the customers that come into our stores. We see all of this being promoted on so many fronts, so many facets. What is a family? It doesn't just have to be, we're told today, it doesn't just have to be a mom and dad raising their kids. We went from that, we've started, again, developing vocabulary words. The blended family. This was husband and wife, but maybe kids from multiple marriages being blended together. So we started talking about the blended family. And now, is it two moms, two dads with children? Does that constitute a family? What you see where we're at. But there's all this messaging, and we need to be careful. We need to be so careful. And really, the lesson this morning is about listening to being careful about who we listen to. Who are we listening to? Are we listening to the media describe and tell us and define for us all of these things that we need to know? Are we listening to them? Are we listening to athletes and pop stars and models and the Kardashians and all these? Is that who we're listening to? Those of you guys that have got teenage kids in particular, you need to have the conversation and have a good understanding of who they're listening to. Because the reality of it is they're not just listening to mom and dad. They're listening to all these voices out there on the internet. We know this is happening because, again, we've developed more vocabulary. We talk about unhealthy body images. Why? Because they're looking at these things on TikTok and Instagram and all these beautiful, skinny, perfectly photoshopped celebrities, and they think, well, I'll never be able to look that way. Well, when you see those same celebrities early in the morning before they get all professionally coiffed and made up, they don't look quite that way. But we have this image, right? We have this image. So we need to be very, very careful of who we listen to. And that's really what our lesson is about this morning, is being careful who you listen to. This is the story of Rehoboam. Rehoboam was one of Solomon's sons, and he came into power after Solomon. And it's interesting when you look at Rehoboam, because Rehoboam, unlike Saul, David, and Solomon, Rehoboam was never anointed to be king by the priest. He would be what we would kind of call a secular leader today. And we see an awful lot of those too, don't we? You know, I mentioned this Wednesday night, but it grieves me when I look at our governments, and we're increasingly electing openly homosexual, openly transgender, openly guys and girls that cheat on their spouse. Used to, that alone would have been the death knell for a political career if you were caught in an adulterous affair. But now, it's nothing. We don't consider these things when we go into the ballot box. Matter of fact, most people don't consider it at all because they don't even go vote. You know, we regularly around here only have 12, maybe 15% of people voting on any given election. And then we wonder, how did we get what we got? So we need to be careful who we're listening to. But Rehoboam, he was a secular leader. He was never anointed for the job. And that's what that's our biggest problem in our country today when you think about government and all that. We've got so many secular leaders. They never consider God. They never get down in the morning and pray for godly wisdom and godly direction as to how to guide our country. If you guys haven't noticed, we've got some pretty big problems out there right now. But we don't see the prayer breakfast as being called, do we? We don't see. I was so encouraged. Probably the most encouraging thing that I've seen on the national scene in a long time was as the Speaker Johnson got sworn into office as Speaker of the House, and there was a group of him and about 4 or 5 other guys up around the dais, and they were bent in prayer, praying over him and for his leadership of this very important governmental institution. And he has made it very clear that he fears God and he wants to do what God desires for this country. That's refreshing, but it's rare. It's rare. Why were they not all up there with him? including ours who professes to be a Christian. Why was he not gathered up around? A good question, isn't it? But we're going to begin in 1 Kings 12:1. Rehoboam has taken the throne, and Rehoboam went to Shechem. For all Israel were come to Shechem to make him king. And it came to pass when Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who was yet in Egypt, heard of it, for he had fled from the presence of King Solomon, and Jeroboam dwelt in Egypt, that they sent and called him. And Jeroboam and all the congregation of Israel came and spake unto Rehoboam, saying, Thy father made our yoke grievous. Now therefore make thou the grievous service of thy father, and his heavy yoke which he put upon us lighter, and we will serve thee. And he, Rehoboam, said unto them, Depart yet for 3 days, and come again to me. And the people departed. So here we see the transition from Solomon to Rehoboam, and the end of Solomon's reign was not a great end. His beginning was much better than his end. You know, when he was first sworn in as king and God made him and anointed him king, you know, he praised this, God asked him, what would you want? We know the story. He asked for this extremely important thing. He asked for wisdom to be able to guide the nation. And as a result of that wise request, God gave him wisdom and was with him and blessed him and the nation of Israel beyond measure. But then we know the story of Solomon, right? Who'd he begin listening to? His wives. There's all these beautiful women that were at his disposal, and he married many and took many more to be concubines, and he began to listen to them, and they turned his heart away from the true God and turned his heart to their heathen idols. No. Well, what did we read? What was it last week's lesson or the week before? You know, when we talked about how sin begins as lust, and then when that sin becomes fully developed, it becomes death. This is what happened to Solomon. Little by little, he began to spiritually die. And along with it, his wisdom began to fade because he was not following God. And he began to embark on a lot of things that probably shouldn't have embarked on, a lot of building projects and a lot of things. We're gonna build new stuff, and I'm gonna occupy myself with building bigger and bigger and greater and more and more impressive things and all that. And in order to do that, he had to press the people into service. And he began to work them to death. Kind of sounds like today, doesn't it? A little bit. Well, it sounds like the church. It sounds like our country. You know, we give God 10%. We don't even do that. Most people don't. But we give God 10%, but the government wants 33 or 35. And it's still never enough. Still never enough. Why? Because they want to build stuff. They want to do stuff. They want to bring glory to their name and all these kinds of things. So we do all these projects and plans and programs so that we can put their name on a bridge or an airport or something. And this is where it is. And so it had become very grievous. And we see as Rehoboam is sworn in, one of the leaders, we'll call him the union boss for the children of Israel, came to Rehoboam and said, hey, you need to lighten up a little bit. People are worn out. People are tired. Your dad overburdened them with way too much work to do all these big projects, and they're not being able to take care of their own homes and their own families the way they need to be taken care of. He said, and if you'll do this, he said, the people will follow you. And Rehoboam listened to him and says, come see me in 3 days. Let me think about it. Let me consider it. Verse 6. And King Rehoboam consulted with the old men that stood before Solomon his father while he yet lived, and he said, how do you advise that I may answer this people? This was a good start. He called the elders. He called the guys that had been around the block a few times. They had some age and some experience and some wisdom. And he said, hey, this is what Jeroboam has come to me. He said, what should I tell them? Verse 7, and they spake unto him, saying, if thou wilt be a servant unto this people this day, and wilt serve them, and answer them, and speak good words to them, then they will be thy servants forever. Okay, I want us to listen. I want us to read kind of carefully through what they told him. He said, if thou wilt be a servant, you king, you be the servant unto this people. See, this is, we have this whole deal, and there's guys that go around the country teaching this. I've read books, and I've seen these guys about servant leadership. This is the pattern of Christ that we get in the New Testament. The King of glory, but yet, what do we see Christ constantly and continually doing? Serving those that were under him. Serving those that were following him. It's a pattern for success. Servant leadership. When we as leaders, whether you're the leader in your home, whether you're a leader at work, whether you're a leader at school, whether you're a leader in the community, whether you're a political leader or a business leader or a family leader or whatever it is, you cannot go wrong if you will be a servant leader. What does that mean? It means you put the good of your people, whoever you're leading, you put their good above your own good. You have that heart that, man, I want to do something that will help those that I'm leading. That's servant leadership. It's the pattern of Christ. This is what these elders were telling me. He said, be a servant leader. Serve your people well. Do the things that will bring them comfort, that will bring them prosperity, that will bring them the spiritual, emotional, financial things that they need. Be that kind of king. He said, and if you will do that, and if you'll speak kindly to them, he said, they will follow you. They will follow you. You know, this is why we see some examples of servant leadership in our society today. And these are a lot of times guys that develop very big groups that follow them. Because there's that trust there. They know that this guy's always thinking about us. He's always trying to do what's best for us. We're going to trust him in these things. Servant leadership. He would have been good. It would have been good if Rehoboam had stopped right there and said, I got you. I understand what you're saying. That's what we're going to do. We're going to do what's best for the people of the nation. Not necessarily what's best and most fun for Rehoboam, the king. Verse 8. But he forsook the counsel of the old men, which they had given him, and he consulted with the young men that were grown up with him, and which stood before him. And he said unto them, what counsel give ye that I may answer this people, who have spoken to me, saying, make the yoke which thy father did put upon us lighter. The old guys give them some good advice, but again, right on the heels of it, it says he forsook their counsel. He rejected it. Servant leadership, man, that doesn't sound like fun. Servant leader, I'm the king. I don't want to be anybody's servant. I'm better than that. You can almost hear some of these things going through his mind, can't you? I'm their king. They'll do what I tell them to do. I pay their paycheck. They'll do what I tell them to do. These are the things that this is the attitude. So what does he do then? He calls in the young guys. And as the commentary writer points out, this is probably not so much that they were young age, although they were probably younger than the elders, but it mainly means that they were inexperienced. They were naive. They were untried. And he calls them in. And not only that, they were his buddies. Okay? Think about this. He called in his friends, his buddies, and asked them for advice. And there's no doubt that they had probably already heard what the old guys had told them. They also, because they were his buddies, they knew something about him, didn't they? They grew up together. They knew what his proclivities were. They knew what his personality was. And probably a big lot of what they were doing, because they knew those things, they were trying to ingratiate themselves to him. We need to be careful when we go to our buddies for advice. If you want marriage advice, do not go to the person that's been married and divorced 3 or 4 times. That's probably not a good idea. Okay? If you need job advice or work advice, don't go to the guy that has never worked more than 6 months at any given job. Yeah. Probably not the best idea, right? We got to be careful that we don't go to our buddies a lot of times to seek advice. I saw this so much when we ran the call center. Had all these, 75 mainly women working for us. And you'd hear them in the little break room, and they would be seeking advice, relationship advice from each other. And all of their relationships were in a mess. All of their relationships were just a disaster. But they'd sit in there and you'd hear them talk, and they would be seeking relationship advice from each other. And I was going, and I thought every time I heard that, how stupid can you be? If I want relationship advice, I'm going to go talk to the couple that's been married for 50 years. Get a little advice from them. They've apparently figured something out along the way, right? Yes, yeah. That's the old way. We got new and better ways. Yes, because they went to their buddies. This is exactly what Rehoboam did. He went to his friends because they knew what answer he wanted. He knew he was likely to get it from them. So he goes there. So be careful who we seek advice from. Nope. So he seeks advice from his friends, and they say, here's what they said, and the young men that were grown up with him spake unto him, saying, Thus shalt thou speak unto this people that spake unto thee, saying, Thy father made our yoke heavy, but make thou it lighter unto us. Thus shalt thou say unto them, My little finger shall be thicker than my father's loins. And now, whereas my father did lade you with a heavy yoke, I will add to your yoke. My father has chastened you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Oh boy, this doesn't sound very wise, does it? They came to you asking for relief, and what is his reaction? You're going to make it worse. Put it on a harder king. Show them who's in control. Show them who's in charge. Show them who the boss is. No, they're out of touch. They're out of touch. It's not that kind of advice is not relevant for us today. It's out of date, old fashioned. So what do? They pour some gasoline on it. I love this quote from John Maxwell that the commentary writer includes. He said, John Maxwell, who's a big religious Christian motivational speaker, he suggests we are constantly carrying two buckets into any emotionally charged situation. One has gasoline in it. The other one has cool, soothing water. And we get to decide which bucket we're going to throw in the situation. That's pretty good, isn't it? That's pretty good, because that's what it is. Are we going to pour a little gasoline on it and just really get the thing burning like an inferno? Or are we going to pour some cool, soothing water on it and try to get things resolved? Try to get everybody back into a place of relationship with each other. You know, this is a great tragedy and travesty that sometimes parents do with their children as their children get old and they get married and they begin to have families of themselves. And then, you know, we see so many situations where Junior's having problems at home and he comes home and he wants to cry on mom or dad's shoulder. And mama tells him, she said, I knew that girl was no good for you. I wish you'd never married her. You know, and you hear stuff like that all the time. What'd you do? Pour gasoline on it or water? You know, we've got to be careful, again, where we go to seek advice, even with our own families. So these young men, they go in and they take a big old 5-gallon drum of gasoline and they just pour it on it and said, yeah, tell them it's going to be bad. You think my dad was bad? You ain't seen nothing yet. Verse 12. So Jeroboam and all the people came to Rehoboam the third day as the king had appointed, saying, come again to me the third day. And the king answered the people roughly and forsook the old man's counsel that they gave him, and spake to them after the counsel of the young men, saying, my father made your yoke heavy, and I will add to your yoke. My father also chastised you with whips, but I will chastise you with scorpions. Wherefore the king hearkened not unto the people. For this cause was from the Lord, he might perform the saying which the Lord spake by Ahijah the Shunamite unto Jeroboam the son of Nebat. So they come back 3 days later. What does the king do? Grinds them into the dirt. They were hoping for a good resolution. They were hoping for some help. But what happened? They got ground into the dirt. Mm-hmm. Yep. And he told them exactly what the young man had told them. How do you think that's going to work out for them? Yes. You remember early in the story of Solomon, as Solomon's really founding his kingdom, And you remember the description in Scripture of when the Queen of Sheba came to visit because she had heard all these glorious things about Israel and about Solomon's reign and all that. So she came for a long visit. And she was there and she was visiting and she was so impressed with everything that she saw. And Scripture relates some of her comments that she made. And what she said was, what impressed her most was the manner in which the people were taken care of. That she could tell that even the servants in the king's castle and the people in the streets and all, they were well mannered, they were well presented, they were well clothed, they were well fed. They presented themselves. She could tell how just affluent and how important Israel had become under Solomon's leadership as she looked at the people. Yeah, yeah. See, this was a picture of Solomon's reign early on. The impressive thing that she saw, in addition to all the obvious wealth of the country, was how the people looked and how they were taken care of and how they presented themselves. Now we fast forward a number of years and we get down to the end of Solomon's reign and we get into Rehoboam, and the people are oppressed. They're beaten down. They're being abused. They're being taken advantage of. You know, this is what happens. You know, as we look around our country, I see a lot of distressing signs. I see a lot of distressing signs when I see things like the fact that the number one class of drugs is not anything to do with disease. It has to do with psychology and our mental health. Our number one most prescribed class of drugs are psych drugs, antidepressants, and all these kinds of things. What does that tell you about the health of our country? It's terrible. Suicide rates exploding. Homelessness exploding. Violence exploding. What does it tell us about the state of our country? Why? Because we've had bad leadership.
You know, like the government, the doctors are pushing. I remember back when my sister
Yes.
17 passed away, it hit me really, really hard. And she was my best friend, and it just killed me, broke my heart. And I went to see my doctor, you know, as a visit, and knew about my sister. He said, well, do you want me to give you something, you know, to help you, you know, because you're depressed?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I didn't know anything about these drugs then, but there was a generic thing. I read on there that he gave me, and I said, oh, no.
No.
God is my protector.
Amen.
Through it all. I'm not going to get on a depression drug.
Amen.
Doctors push this.
Yeah. Well, this, you know, we look around, we see all the warning signs of a nation in distress, a nation in trouble. And yet we don't see leaders addressing these incredibly important issues. We don't see it being addressed in the churches or the homes or in our government. These are the incredibly important things. They're like Rehoboam. Oh, well, we'll just put a little more on them so that we can build some more stuff, so that we can give away some more money. there's a very simple reason why the things that we have to buy have about doubled in cost in the last 3 years. There's a very simple reason. It has nothing to do with supply chains. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. It has nothing to do with any of those things that they distract us with. It has to do with the fact that we printed trillions of dollars. We fired up the printing presses and we printed trillions of dollars and flooded the market with dollars. Yes, $1 trillion in interest only. Wow. Great leadership, haven't we? Had great leadership. But we're a nation in distress just like Israel was a nation in distress under Rehoboam. Verse 16. So when all Israel saw that the king hearkened not unto them, the people answered the king, saying, What portion have we in David? Neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. What were they saying? They were saying, where's our part? Where's our part? We were once a prosperous, wealthy nation where people were well taken care of. Now you just keep loading us up, loading us up, loading us up. To where we can't take any more. We're sick of it. Yes. What portion have we in David? Where's our inheritance from Jesse? So they give this order. To your tents, O Israel. Now see to thine own house, David. So Israel departed unto their tents. They said, King, see ya. We're not doing it any more this way. We gave you an opportunity to do what's right. You totally and utterly rejected it. So now we are rejecting you. But as for the children of Israel, which dwelt in the cities of Judah, Rehoboam reigned over them. So we see the split. And we see Judah and we see Israel. They part ways. There was only a small part that was in the immediate area around King Rehoboam that stayed as part of his subjects. The rest of them said, we're going back to our lands, our places. We're going to do things our way. We don't need you as king anymore. Had a civil war. They split. I think maybe that's what we need to do today. I hate to say it, but I think we need to have a civil war in the United States of America again. We need to just split off. Let the crazy leftist lunatics that want to destroy our country go one direction and let all the rest of us sane, rational people go a different direction. And let's see how that works out. Yes. King Rehoboam hasn't given up yet, though. Then King Rehoboam sent to Adoram, who was over the tribute. He was over the tax collection. That's what that is, tribute. He was the tax collector. He sent this poor guy Adoram and said, hey, go to Israel and collect my taxes. They said that they're not going to be a part, but we still got to have their money. So go get their money. Go collect. Send the IRS out. Send the Department of Justice to go file suit. Go get them. You think that there's any coincidence that one of the current things on the table, unfortunately, because we've got control, Republicans have got control of the House right now, they're being able to hold it at bay. But what was one of Biden's proposals that they got through the last Congress? It was to hire 85,000 additional IRS employees. 85,000. That's well over half of Odessa. Why do you think they would do that? To get money, because they're hungry for the money. And more importantly, I think it's to go out and begin to cause people trouble. Just like they did under the Obama administration when they targeted every conservative group out there and they started having IRS problems. Targeted them. There's no dispute about it. The evidence was introduced into Congress. That's what they did. They targeted them. Yeah. 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 Well, here we go. Yes. We're headed down the same path. You know, we're headed down the same path. So he sends Adoram out. Hey, go collect the taxes. What was Israel's response? And all Israel stoned him with stones that he died. They said, boy, you come into the wrong neighborhood. And they took care of him pretty quick. Therefore, King Rehoboam made speed to get him up to his chariot to flee to Jerusalem. So Israel rebelled against the house of David unto this day. It split the country, split the nation. Bad leadership. Bad leadership. We're really a split country today. We're really split, not just so much geography-wise, but I'll tell you what, we're really split. If you really look at the map, we're really split between the big cities and all the rest of us. It's these big cities, these big urban areas that are just increasingly crazy. We have a couple of those in Houston. Austin, San Antonio, Houston. Those are the big ones. Dallas is not far behind. But it's these big urban areas that keep wanting to just embrace every bit of craziness that comes down the pie. But thank God we have places like us that we have a city council here. Amarillo is working on their sanctuary city for the unborn ordinance. I got an update on that just this week. Lubbock has passed that. You know, they were one of the first. You know, we do have, like, we've got to continue to stand and fight, you know, against these things like Rehoboam would like to do to us. Just put burdens on us, extract tribute from us, oppress us, push us down, tell us we're a bunch of crazy lunatics for believing that abortion is murder and all those things. And we need to be like they did. I think it may be coming to time. We have to stone somebody and send them back home with a message saying we're not doing this anymore. Amen.